Okay, everyone, we're back for some more chat about Celtic and the UEFA Champions League, and potentially a little bit of a look forward to a return to domestic action this weekend against Hibernian. I did promise a bit of Stevie. Sadly, he's a little under the weather, so hopefully you feel better soon, Stevie. But fear not, because we've drafted Joe in. Joe, how are you feeling just more than 24 hours on from Munich?
I'm feeling a little bit better than I did the last time you guys recorded in the immediate aftermath of the match. I'm still working out how I'm feeling. Is that a fair answer? I don't feel terrible. I still don't feel brilliant. I'm sure we'll discuss that over the course.
Well, we check in on you as we go and see how you feel as we progress. I guess you've not had a video yet, and they are quite therapeutic, these videos, and cathartic, because you get to see how you're feeling. We're not going to cover the game in depth. Obviously, we did that yesterday. Paul and Asim joined me, so check that video out if you want a kind of blow-by-blow account of the game and some other chat. Today we're going to chat more generally about the UEFA Champions League campaign as a whole. We're going to chat about a highlight, a low light, a rating out of 10. Those are the questions I asked you, and plenty of you have sent them in, so we'll be reading out your thoughts. But yeah, Joe, what's the overall feeling on the 10 matches we played in the Champions League? It was some ride, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, a brilliant way to approach the new format. You know, it was always going to be totally different perspective as well, getting to that December game and then knowing there was that almost a month break until the 22nd of January, and then obviously the Villa game a week after, and then a fortnight after that again, to have such a demanding tie in that playoff round for the knockouts. I think that I've enjoyed the format. Without looking too far ahead, I shudder to think if there was a really difficult draw that Celtic got, and you've got that kind of prolonged list of fixtures in there. But I think what we've seen from the campaign now, what we've seen out of those 10 games, you know, like almost every single Celtic fan that I've seen on social media, on your videos, on other channels, that sense of pride and that sense of belonging and that sense of progress. And that was something that the manager said right at the very start when he came back to the club, rather, that he wanted to progress in Europe. That was a big one for him. He said at the start of the season, and 2 games in, we weren't really sure where we stood with that, because we'd obviously had a fantastic opener and then a not so fantastic sophomore game, and then, you know, kind of that worry about, is this what happens when we play a big team away from home? And then I think the Atalanta game kind of smoothed that over for a lot of people. And then I think on Tuesday night, you know, it was even just bringing up Tuesday night, it was so cruel. I've said to anyone that's willing to listen, you know, like losing that goal, and I know you guys have spoken about it at length already, but losing that goal at any other time in the game, in the first 5-10 minutes, the first 15 minutes, the last 10 minutes, or even in extra time, you could cope with it. But virtually the last kick of the ball just made it quite difficult, didn't it?
Joe, we're not going back into the game. Why are you doing this to me,
sorry,
man?
Sorry.
I was just dealing with it. No, like, it's the fact we actually didn't really even get kickoff. We did get kickoff, but the whistle went right after, and it was just horrible. But I think you're right. The point you're making about the fixtures we got is one I've seen a fair bit online. A few Rangers fans have pointed out to me. They've got some cheek, by the way. Just deal with try to beat Scottish Championship teams before you talk about the Champions League guys. But they've been commenting saying, "Oh, you got lucky. You know, all this stuff. You played the 36th team in the league phase. You played the 35th. You played whatever Leipzig were, maybe 32nd, 33rd, and that's the only teams you beat, and all of that stuff." Our fixtures were favourable to an extent, but there was still the vast majority of games there that were really tough matches for Celtic, and teams that are still going in the tournament, teams like Villa and Club Brugge, who don't look bad now after battering Atalanta and Borussia Dortmund. These were tough games for us, and we competed in all of them apart from Borussia Dortmund. The point I would make to that is that next season, okay, we could get much harder fixtures. Chances are they'll be a bit harder, but not dramatically harder. But like, we literally just played Bayern Munich at the Allianz Arena, which is about as hard as you'll be able to get next season. Like, that would be our pot one hardest pot 1 match away from home to Bayern Munich next season, and we were 30 seconds away from winning that game. So I think it's totally unfair to say that Celtic qualifying for the next round of the tournament is down to the fixtures solely, as some people are saying, like, as we say, Rangers fans, etc. I think even with some tougher fixtures, Celtic would have qualified for the top 24, because we qualified for the top 24 with a bit to spare. I mean, we get 12 points. So I think, the fixtures might be harder next season if we get there. Obviously, I should say we've got a round of qualifying to get through. There's a fair chance we'll have more challenging fixtures, but they're not going to be much more challenging than the Allianz Arena in Bayern Munich, and we competed really well over those games. So I feel fine about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there's so much positivity to be taken. I've noticed a lot of people comparing, not to go back into the game, but the cruelness of losing the goal to the Barcelona game. Excuse me, the Jordi Alba last minute winner. And I was actually there. My father and I were there in that one. And
I was there as well.
What makes it
Horrible.
extra cruel this time around is we all know how the rest of that campaign panned out. We had a chance to rectify it against all the odds, a fortnight later, and Celtic prevailed way back in 2012. Had Celtic held on for that draw, it's easy to forget that they would have finished on level points with Barcelona that year. Celtic finished on 10, Barca 13, so obviously you deduct 2 and add 1 to Celtic, which was a remarkable achievement. But I think it's not just about, everybody's saying the same things about you need to back the manager. And whilst I do believe this, which I'm sure we'll speak about when we're thinking about, where Celtic are moving forward in this new look Champions League later on in the conversation. But I think the way that the team has responded, we make so much about the kind of the symbiosis or the relationship between the fans and the players and how important that is. And obviously it's normally within the context of Celtic Park, but equally, and as people may or may not know, I used to work in club media at Celtic, and I think part of one of the benefits of that job was it kind of stripped back some of the mysticism around football. So they kind of state the obvious. I know these guys are, full-time athletes. Even in Lennoxtown, you wouldn't be surprised to know, like, there's loads of stuff about the training regimes and the diets and all that, which keeps everybody focused, apart from whatever they have personally. And they obviously live in a different stratosphere than us in terms of financial and everything else. However, like, they are just human beings. And I know that you always hear that when, maybe things aren't going so well, but it applies when things are going well as well. And that symbiosis, I know they say they kind of drown out the media, or maybe they stay off social media and stuff like that. But I believe that the players bought into their own hype on Tuesday for all the right reasons. Sometimes that can go against you. We're into the Dortmund game, and perhaps there was a false sense of Celtic are here to announce themselves, and it didn't. The game plan just didn't come together. But we saw a team working on Tuesday night, and you could hear the Celtic fans even in television. I'm not sure what it was like in the stadium itself. I've not had a chance to speak to anyone yet. But obviously you heard a lot of the Bayern fans, but you could hear in the breaks the Celtic fans as well. So they sounded like they really did themselves proud. So, I know for a fact that the players will be absolutely devastated on that flight home, especially with all the top brass there. I know that it was Dermot Desmond was there, I think, as well, wasn't he? And, they'll be struggling in that moment, but knowing that, pride has been that kind of overriding thing. And again, I'm not saying anything new when I say that Celtic fans don't generally do the kind of valiant in defeat. But there was a real sense of pride about it that I think it's just so unfortunate that this is the last game, because you want to carry that on right away. But maybe that distance, another transfer window in the summer, as you say, need to get through a qualifier. But assuming they do, bringing all these learnings forward, and hopefully it bodes well. Everything's there, the impetus is there to really have a go next season as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I don't know if you've been across like their various players' social media messages after the game, but I think that's been quite telling as well. Alistair Johnson and Nicholas Kuhn, I believe, both posted the same message. Proud was the word they used. Rayo Hatate posted on Instagram saying limitless possibilities, which is a little cryptic, but also you kind of get what he's saying. Adam Ida finished his post by saying we'll grow from it and be back. So I think there is a sense here that the players will obviously want to get back there and really prove that they can really compete at that level. And I don't know if when Brendan Rodgers came into the club, he kind of made the comment. I was looking at them earlier. It was like, we want to do something in Europe, I think was the quote, and people weren't really sure what that was, and we still don't know for sure. But for me, the big thing I'm looking at now is, can you do something we've never done before, and can you win a Champions League knockout tie? That for me would be something major in Europe. And like, we were playing Bayern Munich, that's about as hard a tie as you could get over the past couple of weeks, and we're 30 seconds for taking it to extra time. Like, you know what I mean? We're not a million miles away from even doing that, and that's something Celtic have never done. I know we've reached the last 16 before, and that was only the round of 24 effectively. But like, with progression in this team, get back into the competition next season, regardless of what your fixtures are like, reach that top 24 again, 10, 11, 12 points. I think it's doable. And then maybe you don't get a draw quite as difficult as Bayern, and it's a team you can beat. So I am, I'm really hopeful, and I think the confidence they'll have taken from that game as well, like, that's about as hard as it gets. Going to the Allianz Arena in a knockout match, knowing you're already down in the tie. It was, a lot of us kind of thought it was near on impossible, and Celtic nearly did it. We weren't miles away. So like, you wonder next season if we go to like Bergamo, for example, or even Dortmund. Like, Dortmund seems like a step down from the Allianz, if you know what I mean. Because like, the Allianz is like as difficult as it comes against Bayern in the knockouts. Like, these huge games that probably would have really daunted the team this season, I think next season, the team will feel good about those kind of games, because they've almost they've been to the summit, and now anything else is down a wee bit from there. And that's not to say we'll get results in all of these games. Obviously, teams like Dortmund, Atalanta, Villa, there's still a fair chance they beat us when we go there, because these are really good teams. But I really hope we're done with the days of like 7-1 defeats to Dortmund. I hope at the very least now we can really compete in all of these games, even against the very best teams in Europe.
And I mean, without stating the obvious, it's for Celtic and this at this elite level in European football, it feels like it's about consistency, and that obviously comes from the manager. And very personally, the emotions that I've been going through since Tuesday night reminded me of the Europa League exit in 2019, when we lost 2-0 against Valencia over there, and the game was going well. It looked like Brendan Rodgers' brand of football was really coming through on the European stage. Jeremy Toljan, Loney, gets sent off, and then the game just kind of escapes them at that point. And I remember, again, being on Club Media at the time, that was on the Thursday, end of February 2019. We played Motherwell on the Sunday, and then at the time there was the Celtic View was still a weekly, and it was my turn to interview the manager on the Monday for Deadline on the Monday, magazine going out the Wednesday, and I had all these questions written down about how this was Brendan Rodgers' European football really coming through, and it was a real shame that there was going to be this extended break to the next one. The next day, Brendan Rodgers is down at the King Power, and obviously never got to ask him those questions, so that's when he owes me. But I suppose the parallels I'm drawing is, at that point, I felt like Celtic were really hitting a level in European football, and then obviously it didn't work out for the Champions League the next season, but there was that Europa League against Lazio and getting through that. So I kind of feel like with this team, and again, 1,000,001 people have been saying it, when do we start talking properly about extending Brendan Rodgers' contract at Celtic, assuming he wants to stay, and all these players with all these testimonials on social media, like, who knows what will happen in the summertime. But if they manage to keep this team together and they add to it, which they probably should have done, yeah, exactly. Even Schlupp, I mean, like, I would, if he's up for it and we can meet the wages, and Tuesday night alone is enough, if he's a free agent in the summertime, to bring him in for me. He was a different level. And yeah, I mean, it's taken that consistency. Brendan Rodgers has hit a new height with this Celtic team. If we can keep him, and if we can back him, and everybody pulls together from the board level all the way down, then it bodes well, and it's exciting. I think that's the kind of overriding emotion or position to be in here. It's exciting again. That confidence seems to be back, that swagger and that fearlessness that's been missing for so long. And the clubs around you, like you mentioned, Club Brugge, or even Atalanta, like, why shouldn't Celtic be among them? And hopefully next season as well.
That's what I mean. Like for those first couple of years, and I know Rodgers has only been there for, this is his second season in the Champions League since he returned, but I do view it as a 3-year thing, because Postecoglou had that one season, and that first year was tough. That was just about being back, wasn't it? That year was about being back at the top level after a good few years away, but it was tough. I think we got a couple of points. The next year, last season, under Brendan Rodgers, was tough again, but we were really close, I felt. 5 out of the 6 games were really tight. And just wee details here and there, both boxes, sloppy goals, daft inexperience, red cards, Odin Holm, Dyson Maida, Gustav Lagerbielke, those kind of cost us, the late Lazio goal, etc. But I think a lot of people felt we're not a million miles away. That was the phrase I kept using this season. And then this season, obviously, we've seen that real improvement, and that's been obvious to see. And hopefully, you nothing's a given at this level, because as you say, we could go out next year, we could go out in qualifying, but say we make it through qualifying, we can make it into the league phase and get an absolute stinker of a 8 matches, and could end up not making the top 24, and then it feels like regression. So it's tough at that level, but it does feel to me like if you keep backing Brendan Rodgers, Tierney's going to make such a difference to the team at that level. I think you saw that with even Schlupp at the weekend, and I think Tierney's even a level above him. And, improve the squad, have players who can come into games, because last night was difficult with the options kind of coming off the bench. So improve the squad a bit. I think the actual first team is absolutely fine for the level. Just a few bits of quality. Obviously, you want to try and keep players as well, but I really don't think we're far away from getting back there. And that was a brilliant journey. Like the 10 games, I absolutely loved them. You would almost settle for that every season, wouldn't you? 10 top Champions League level games, finishes with a tie that you're probably big underdogs in, and you give a good account of yourself. I would probably sign up for that every year. Anyway, let's do comments, because I've been asking you for your thoughts on the overall Champions League campaign. Get TJ Lindy. Oh, and I'm asking for a rating out of 10 as well. TJ's given it a 6 out of 10. Lowe's CCV own goal, leaving Harry Kane unmarked, and the result in Zagreb. I know we didn't lose, however, it was an opportunity to get a result for points. Highs, easy to forget, but has to be Bratislava result. Adam Ida goals at Villa Park, and the result and performance on Tuesday. I think the Bratislava game has been kind of lost amongst all this, and I think they finished bottom, or the second bottom it was in the table, and they weren't a great team at all, but we completely battered them that night, and I think that was a huge night for confidence. Imagine we hadn't have beaten them that night, we wouldn't have gone on to have all the other stuff. I think that was a huge night, and the fact we beat them 5-1, I know it's not the opposition of Leipzig or Atalanta or even Bayern Munich, but I thought that was a great performance that night.
Yeah, and I think I think that performance as well, and this is all hindsight, just obviously you're kind of reflecting on everything that's happened in between, but there was something really good about giving them a doing, and then there wasn't something good about going and getting hammered off Dortmund, but in terms of the learning process, at the time after the Dortmund game, all the outspoken pundits, from various English-based radio shows, etc., were saying, oh, you can hammer Bratislava, they're nobody, but when you come up against the big boys, so that narrative was starting to get weaved there as well. And obviously, Brendan Rodgers has mentioned a media narrative a few times already in his second spell at the club. So that result was it was a great result. We made a mistake for the goal as well, which was another kind of sharp reminder of no matter what, no matter who you're playing against, people will punish you, because they've earned their right to be in the group stages of this, or rather the league phase of this tournament as well. But that result, then a pretty humbling defeat. In hindsight, it paved the way for the rest of the campaign, didn't it? You could have scraped by 1-0, 2-0, and it would have been even worse. But to show the quality, to then be humbled by Dortmund, it paved the way for the Atalanta, for Leipzig and everything else. So no, and it was also a really nice sunset that night as well. I think I've mentioned that before. That's I know that sounds kind of as if I'm over romanticising there, but it's these wee things which you'll remember, and I'll remember that brilliant campaign we had as well. But obviously the football matched the kind of the scene setting as well.
Yeah, no, that was a great night. I loved watching that game. Seeing Celtic play like that at Champions League level was incredible. Okay, Graham Linklater, defo an 8 out of 10 for me. We grew through the campaign, so excited for next season's attempt at Europe. Highlight was the way we were able to harass several top teams and win the ball back and slice through them at times. It was great to see. It wasn't just Leipzig that went full proper panic mode at times. It's nice to be proud of Celtic's displays in Europe again. I'm not mentioning the Dortmund game as a low light. That's like the COVID league we didn't win. I've erased both from my memory banks. Well done, Graham. The low light is not managing to get a win away. So close though. If we had achieved it last night, my rating would definitely have been 10 out of 10 for the campaign. We've got Eiffel, Kreutz, 7 out of 10. Lots of quality shown throughout the campaign, including down to the last whistle, and got some great results. Very promising performances to carry into the next campaign, but overall disappointing not to make it past the last 24 and to drop points in winnable games. Highlight, beating Leipzig 3-1, an incredible performance from the boys. Lowlight, failing to score away at Zagreb. A big club but in poor form, and with a lot of injuries we should have been able to win. Footy, comps and vids, might be a left field shout, but my personal highlight was our point in Bergamo. Felt like a breaking point fixture after the Dortmund disaster, and the resolve the team showed that night set the tone for not just the rest of this campaign but also future ones to come. Genuine belief that we can get results against Europe's elite once again. The low light is of course the heartbreak on Tuesday night, but one that is also tinged with a vast amount of pride. The overall campaign I would rate a 9, only marked down due to still waiting for that elusive away victory. But our main aim to reach the knockout stages was achieved, and I'm already greatly looking forward to having another crack at it next season. The point in Bergamo was a big one.
Yeah, huge. And again, coming right off the back of that Dortmund game, I think that... Yeah, I think those are all fair points. I think it's the... Again, I go back to my point about it being frustrating that we need to wait now. You know, like with all due respect to Hibs at the weekend, and even our neighbours across the... Yeah, I was going to say that, even our neighbours across the city this year. I mean, who knows, I could be eating my words, but it feels like the Ibrox game at the turn of the year was an anomaly as well. It's a bad day at the office for pretty much everybody on the pitch that day, and coming up now for March the 16th, isn't it, the next one at Celtic Park. If Celtic can play with any of the level of dig and grit and determination that they have over the course of those two games against Bayern Munich, actually, it shouldn't be anything to worry about. And being so far in front of the league is obviously wonderful. But no, it's hearing everybody's perspective and feeling the same and just wanting to go again. It reminds me of the winning the Invincible season. That was a season that, of all of them, you didn't want them to end at all. Having that. It was a short break at the time, so obviously there was more qualifiers in the summer, but it felt too long, and that's kind of how it feels now. It's several months away, but as I said before about the players taking this kind of stuff in, I think they'll be ready to go as well. And that's for all the players that have been there for a long time, Callum McGregor and the likes. Schmeichel, not necessarily at Celtic, but people that are familiar with this level of football, but dying to get back to it, and then obviously the people who have only just experienced it will want more, and. Yeah, I can't wait as well.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad thing that everyone's dying to get back there, because it means that when it comes, it will hopefully be ready for it. All right, Mackenzie, Celtic 8 out of 10. RB game highlight because it was my birthday and we won. I was about to say happy birthday there, but it was about 5 months ago. I don't know for low light other than 7-1. This UCL campaign been about learning, and we got beat 7-1, then went away and learned to be patient. Then used our home advantage against RB. It's been very good Champions League campaign. Bobby Shaw, highlight, drawn with Bayern in Munich regardless of the overall outcome. Low light, losing to them at home through hand and daft goals, or the own goal at home to Bruges. That has to be the low light, the own goal at home to Bruges. Jeez, Okay, Christopher, it has to be 8 out of 10. It'd be easy to say 10 out of 10 compared to the last 10 or 15 years, but this team is exceptional. The best we've had in a long time. We were better than Zagreb, and if we were more composed against Villa, you never know. The amount of chances we created against Bayern shows this year's squad has the capability to compete against these teams. Drew with Atalanta, beat Leipzig. There was an opportunity this year to do something special in Europe, and we were so close to putting out one of the favourites. If we got through that tie, the players and everyone would start believing. That's what makes it so hard to take. We might never have a front three as good as this ever again. One of Kun or Maida will leave in the summer. Oh no. And it's heartbreaking missing an opportunity like that with the squad we have this year. I mean, we do have to try and keep the squad. Maybe one player leaves, because that's kind of natural, but you certainly don't want a repeat of that year there where you lose Hart, you lose O'Reilly, and you lose Kyogo in January. I think we need to be clever with it and replace well.
Yeah, and it's hard to say. I mean, it's hard to say at this stage. It's easy to forget that there is another 3-4 months until the transfer window's back open again. But yeah, players like Nicholas Kuhn, you don't want to lose, but he's been very upfront about his ambitions, and obviously wanting to turn it on against German opposition, as we saw in both times that this happened. That happened this season. His two big ones were playing in the Champions League and getting that national call up. I'd love to think Brendan Rodgers can put an arm around him in the summertime and convince him that that's another crack at the Champions League. Put yourself, at the very least, put yourself in the shop window for another season. And you never know. Nicholas Kuhn could be sitting here thinking, I want to retire at Celtic. And then who knows? But yeah, keeping the team together will be vital. And I think, because Kyogo left in the January, I hadn't quite pieced together that those three players left in such a short. Do you know what I mean? Obviously O'Reilly and Hart leaving feels like a long time ago now, given what's happened this season so far. But you're absolutely right. Obviously, it's within the space of 6 months, and that's key players in the Postecoglou Rodgers transitionary area, and obviously come into their own under Brendan Rodgers as well. But keeping them together will be hugely important, and of course, so will supplementing them.
Yeah, that's the big thing. I think the spine of the team is hopefully pretty much going to be there. Schmeichel's going to be there next season. McGregor's going to be there. Engels will still be with us next year, and Anida or another striker signed. So yeah, it's just really, Maida's going to be a huge one, but I don't know, Maida's clearly going to have interest in him, but I would love to think we could keep Maida. Kuhn potentially leaves, but again, maybe does another year. O'Reilly did 2.5 years, didn't he? So Kuhn possibly does the same. There'll be interest in a lot of our players, but Tierney's coming back. I think Alistair Johnson will be with us next season. To give it a real crack, but also I'm wary of people thinking, right, let's go one more year at it, almost like the 10 in a row, the one more year and then after that we can, because I want this to be like Celtic going forward. I want the Champions League to be a thing we play in every season. Obviously that's never going to happen. You're going to have years you miss, but I don't want it all just being right, focus one last go next year, because I want the following year continual progress, the year after that continual progress. So I'm wary of that. Mr. Celtic, 8 out of 10. Highlight the level on and off the ball against Leipzig. Low was probably Zagreb away. I feel it was a match we didn't show our true level. A few people talking about Zagreb away. I want to be Edward saying 8 out of 10. The draw was kind, but the performance against Bayern was the best European performance of the modern era. Highlight for me was the performance away to Bayern. Haven't in my lifetime seen us go toe-to-toe with an elite UCL club like that. Low light I thought was the Zagreb game. A point away to a side with European pedigree as Dinamo have is never a bad result, but the circumstances with the number of players they were missing and the conservative nature of the performance disappointed me. Again, that might just be about learning next season and winning games like that. PA Con, 8 out of 10. Highlight was Kuhn's goal against Bayern. Low light was CCV own goal against Bruges at Parkhead. And just finally, because there's so many comments here, Erin saying 8 out of 10. Should have finished higher in the group after being in a really great position after the opening 4. Disappointing result in Zagreb, but brilliant results against Leipzig, Bruges, Atalanta and Bayern. It's the hope that kills you, and I was going to give a 7 out of 10 because I feel we should be in the last 16 if we could have picked up those points in Zagreb. But the highs outweigh that. Selling Kyogo without a replacement for Villa and Bayern is also a disappointment. Highlight was a half hour of delirium in Munich. Low light was a snorefest against Dinamo. Overall, very proud and will now confidently say that Dyson is the best since Larsson. Wow. Give us your highlight, your low light, and your rating out of 10, Joe, and then we'll head.
I think 8 out of 10 for me, and I think I'm just basing it on the fact that there was 10 games, and like a number of people, Zagreb felt like a missed opportunity, and Dortmund was just, I mean, I'm happy again in reflection to say it was an anomaly. It's not a fair reflection of Celtic in any way, shape or form. Although, like, I'm not the first person to say this, but if you consider that a failure, it's not the worst. The result is still quite embarrassing on that stage. But there were some big results against bigger teams than Celtic as well over the course, and but you never want to see Celtic to play like that. But if they learn from it, then that's totally fine by me. Highlight. I do think about this before I came on, and I'm going to pick a kind of left field. Sounds like I'm being negative, but it's with a positive overarching view of it. Was seeing the reaction of the players at full time in Munich. Hatate, who I love, I'm not one of the haters. I know he is a bit of a divisive player among some of the Celtic fan base, but to see him visibly upset, I don't want to see people upset, but that level of emotion, leaving it all on the pitch, the cliche, the Callum McGregor looking up at the scoreboard, Schmeichel as well, hugging Manuel Neuer at the end, that's a highlight for me, because whilst, you wanted to win the game, and it's so easy to forget that we drew the game. We drew against Bayern Munich just because obviously it's tinged with so much disappointment because you lose the tie. But it's still a draw, which is still a remarkable result. Wanted that win, wanted that first win in Germany as well, like everybody. But to see the players take it so personally, it's not nice to see, but I think if all we've spoken about, all everybody's speaking about how we bring this forward, that's a highlight for me, that Celtic are contenders again, and it means so much, and you want to see them harness that and take it forward. Low light for me is failing to replace Kyogo and to do more in the January transfer window. It's the first time in 12 years that Celtic have had the chance to reinforce in European football. Again, like we said a million times before, they appeared to know that Kyogo was interested in leaving for a long time. When they let him go, surprised me like everybody else. And the first time of this new Champions League format, it just felt like we could have had more on the bench on Tuesday night. So for me, that's a real disappointment as a fan, because I think that you need to give yourself a fighting chance when you're ostensibly punching above your weight. As proud as I am of Celtic, when you look at the disparity in wealth, when you look at disparity in talent, Celtic were phenomenal on Tuesday night. But to have more inspiration coming off the bench would be, it could have made the difference. So maybe learning there. And like you said, going back to your point about you want to see Celtic compete not just next year, but to keep going and keep going. Arne Engels should no way be the ceiling now, the 11 million. We'd love to see that going up to 20 or more. Because that's what teams like Club Brugge and everybody else around, the teams like Ajax have been doing it for years, that reinvestment in the team. I want to see that from Celtic. And
people will kind of probably have gasped when you said 20, but like if the money is there, and also I think it's always been the plan that if you buy a player for 20, then your ceiling for buying players goes up, but your ceiling for selling players goes up as well. And it's now 30 million we get for selling players, but that could become 40. And rather than signing for 10 and selling for 30, you could sign for 20 and sell for 50. Like, that is the way things are heading. And
it needs to go up the way, doesn't it? It needs to go up the way. And I think that, I know the board take a lot of stick at Celtic, and, no matter where you stand with that, Brendan Rodgers was backed in the summertime. And I think that it did set a precedent that we thought that this is going to be the case now. Now, maybe it's the case that the summer window is when they want it back and they'll do less business in January. But it just felt incomprehensible to lose Kyogo and not have more of a backup there, regardless of whether Dyson Maeda shines and becomes the best since Larsson, as per the comments. But yeah, that's where I stand with it all. What about you?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think we just need to keep looking to progress. I even think there was evidence at the Allianz Arena, like, of Engels just looking like the kind of quality that you buy at Champions League level. Now, I know he hasn't always looked that so far, but I thought he was outstanding outstanding against Bayern Munich, and I think that's what you pay for. That's what we've spoken about as fans, and it was funny actually seeing it, because people say, "Oh, you're never going to match these teams like Bayern anyway." Like, because what difference is signing a player for 12 million going to make against the 100 million players of Bayern Munich? But for me, it showed that, signing a guy like Engels and him playing like that in comparison to maybe signing a £3 or £4 million player in the past, I think the difference was really noticeable. So you pay that premium for players who have played at a good level, like Engels, highly sought after. I think you see the benefits. I'm just thinking poor old Scottish football, because we're already this far ahead, and Celtic, I think, are just going to shoot clear even further, because we're obviously, I just sense like, obviously the domestic stuff's always going to be there and take care of itself, but I just sense everyone's like, European football is the thing now. And obviously, as I repeat, like, that doesn't mean we're suddenly going to go, Rangers have a trophy or that. Like, we're going to still try and win the treble every year, but I really think European football is what is driving everyone at the club now, and that's the way I want it. I mean, those 10 games in the Champions League, I didn't love all of them, I loved 9 of them. But I absolutely loved them, doing the channel, the build up to them, chatting about it with guys like you afterwards, the games themselves. So much better than Scottish football. It's just a buzz you don't get in Scottish football. But anyway, we return to Scottish football. We didn't even get a chance to preview the Hibs game, Joe, so apologies for that, but we've had you on 40 minutes, so I'll let you head, and we'll catch up with you again soon. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Appreciate it. We're very near 13,000 subscribers, everyone. Less than 100 away. So please click that button and get us there. I will return tomorrow, when I will definitely talk about Hibs v Celtic.